It's 9 p.m. over the Indian Ocean, 37,000 feet up, pitch black, and a Boeing 747 carrying 263 people just lost all 4 engines at once. No warning, no mechanical failure, no fuel leak. Every single engine dead in the same breath. The plane is now a 400-ton glider, slowly sinking toward the ocean, in the dark. And here's the part that'll mess with your head. The pilots actually restarted those engines, mid-air, in the dark, over the ocean. But how? Because there's no key, no crank, no giant button. Starting a jet engine, dead cold, at altitude, in the dark, is one of the most precisely ordered sequences in all of aviation. Get one step wrong, and the fire that brings the engine to life destroys it instead.
It's just after 9 at night, summer 1982. A Boeing 747 is cruising at 37,000 feet over the Indian Ocean, and the cabin is quiet, the passengers are settled, and Captain Eric Moody is doing what airline pilots do on a long haul, managing a machine that's working perfectly. And then, in the span of about 4 seconds, it stops working. All 4 engines flame out, simultaneously. Not 1, not 2, all 4. 263 people are now sitting inside what is functionally a very large, very expensive glider, sinking silently toward the ocean in the pitch dark, and nobody on board yet understands why. The question isn't just what happened. The question is, can any of those engines come back? We'll answer that. But first, you need to understand something most people get completely wrong about jet engines. Because without this, what those pilots did makes no sense at all.
All right, let's break this down. Because jet engines sound complicated, but the logic is actually wild. The whole thing runs on 4 steps. Suck, squeeze, burn, blow. The fan at the front, and we're talking taller than a grown man, pulls in over a ton of air every single second. That air gets crushed by rows of spinning compressor blades until it's superheated and packed tight. Then fuel sprays into that compressed air like a fine mist. Think perfume bottle, but under insane pressure, and ignites. That burning gas rockets toward the back, spinning a turbine on its way out. That turbine connects back to the compressor, which keeps squeezing more air, which keeps feeding the fire. Suck, squeeze, burn, blow. Over and over, thousands of feet in the air, millions of times per flight. Beautiful cycle, right? Except there's one moment where this whole system completely breaks down, and that's before the engine ever starts. The moment you realize the flaw, you'll understand why starting a jet engine is actually one of the most dangerous things a pilot can do.
Here's the brutal paradox. To make fire, the engine needs compressed air. To compress air, it needs the blades already spinning fast. And to spin those blades, it needs the fire it hasn't lit yet. It's a loop with no entry point, a snake eating its own tail. A cold jet engine, sitting silent on a runway, cannot start itself, not even a little bit. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because what happens if you skip ahead and force fuel into an engine that's barely turning? The airflow isn't strong enough to push the flame through cleanly, so the fire just sits there, cooking the metal. Temperatures inside spike past safe limits in seconds. Turbine blades worth millions of dollars start warping. Pilots have a name for this nightmare, a hot start, and it can destroy an engine before the plane ever moves an inch. So engineers had to solve what looked like an impossible problem. How do you start an engine that needs fire to start without using fire to start it? The answer is hiding in a place you've walked right past 100 times.
Look at the very back of almost any commercial airliner. Right at the tip of the tail, there's a small opening. Easy to miss, easy to ignore. Behind it
sits a completely separate engine, a small gas turbine, no bigger than a large barrel, called the Auxiliary Power Unit, APU for short. Most passengers have no idea it exists. But here's the thing. That high-pitched whine you hear while you're still boarding, way before the big engines turn, that's the APU. Already running, already doing its job. It starts with a simple battery-powered electric motor. Spin it up, add fuel, ignite it, and now you've got a running engine producing compressed air. That compressed air gets piped through channels running through the plane's body, all the way out to the big engines under the wings. The battery starts the APU starts the engines. One small fire lighting two massive ones. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Because what happens inside that big engine once the APU sends that air? The sequence that follows has to go in perfect order. One step out of place, and you're back to the hot start nightmare.
The captain reaches to the overhead panel and turns the start switch for engine 1. A valve opens, and compressed air from the APU blasts into a small device tucked under the engine, the air turbine starter. Think of it as a little windmill attached to the engine's core shaft. That rushing air spins the windmill turns the shaft, and the shaft drives the high-pressure compressor. Slowly at first, then faster. The sound you hear, that rising moan that builds before every flight, that isn't fuel igniting yet. That's compressed air forcing the engine's guts into motion. Pilots watch one number on the screen, N2, the speed of that core shaft. When it hits around 20%, the airflow is finally strong enough. Only then do the pilots open the fuel valve. Only then do the igniters fire. High-energy electrical sparks, like tiny lightning bolts, igniting that fuel mist. The engine catches. Temperatures climb. The fire roars. And from this moment, the engine begins producing enough energy to keep itself alive. Once the engine hits self-sustaining speed, something clever happens automatically. Something you'd never guess unless you'd been in that cockpit. And it changes how the second engine starts entirely.
Around 50 to 60% N2, the engine crosses what engineers call self-sustaining speed. It's now producing enough power to keep its own blades spinning without any help from the starter. At this point, something elegant happens. The igniter switches off because the flame is now burning continuously on its own. The compressed air supply shuts off automatically because the engine is now moving faster than the starter windmill can keep up with. A one-way clutch, called a sprag clutch, same idea as a freewheel on a bicycle, simply releases. No one has to touch anything. The starter lets go, and engine 1 is now completely independent. Now, here's the slick part. Instead of using the APU again for engine 2, the pilots take compressed bleed air from engine 1, now running, and pipe it across to start engine 2. Engine 1 starts engine 2. Engineers call this a cross-bleed start, one engine waking up another, like passing the torch. Now, here's where we go back to that 747 over the Indian Ocean, because what Captain Moody did next is one of the most remarkable pieces of real-time aviation problem-solving in history, and it only works because of everything you just learned.
British Airways Flight 9. 4 engines dead. Pitch dark. Ocean below. The culprit, an invisible cloud of volcanic ash from an erupting Indonesian volcano, Mount Galunggung. The ash poured into all 4 engines, melted in the heat, and fused onto the blades like glass, choking every one of them to a complete stop. But here's the lucky twist of physics. With the fire out, the engines cooled fast during the long glide. And as the metal cooled, that glassy crust cracked and flaked away. Meanwhile, the plane descended into thicker, cleaner air below the ash cloud. And now, Moody and his crew ran the exact restart sequence you just learned. Spin first, burn second. The descending aircraft gave them airspeed. That airspeed spun the dead engines. And one by one, with fuel and ignition introduced at exactly the right moment, the engines coughed, caught,
and roared back to life. That battered 747 landed safely in Jakarta. Every single person alive. Windscreens sandblasted, nearly opaque by volcanic ash, and the crew landed almost blind. Dead engines restarted mid-air, using nothing but the laws of physics and the right sequence done in the right order. And that's the thing about jet engines. They're not as fragile as people fear. Lose one, the plane keeps flying. Lose all of them, the plane can still glide. Choke them on volcanic ash, and under the right conditions, they come back to life. But here's what I want to know from you. If you had been in that cockpit, 4 engines dead, ocean below, pitch dark, what's the first thing you would have done? Drop your answer below. Because the next time you hear that rising moan outside your window at the gate, you won't just hear an engine starting. You'll hear a battery waking a hidden engine in the tail, blasting compressed air through a pipe, spinning a shaft, and only then, only after everything is exactly right, lighting a fire that could power a city. And now, you know exactly how it works.